called Making Lemonade Out of Lemons. So just a little bit about me. I've in the local region, I'm the founder of several startups. Most recently, I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of Benekiva, which is a life insurance platform that helps insurance carriers with claims automation and asset retention. And my why as to why I wanted to have this particular topic at Venture Cafe is I made this comment to Gina, I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. And I made the comment, oh yeah, as entrepreneurs, we know how to make lemonade out of lemons that get thrown at us. Because anytime there's a hard situation, we just figure it out. Like, yes, we sometimes complain, but we figure out how to just kind of hustle and get to it. And then when I talk to, I get, throughout my travels, I get to speak with a lot of interesting people, a lot of entrepreneurs that, whether they're startups or they're now owners of, they've raised a lot of capital and they're growing and scaling their teams. And one of the things that I've learned is all of them get thrown lemons all the time, and it's an interesting perspective to figure out what is the secret sauce? What did they learn from it? So my why as to why we're having this conversation, and we want to continue to have this conversation, is it's lessons of experience. In entrepreneurship, recency of experience is more valuable than if you've been in corporate America and have been grinding through your job for 20 years. Because we've gone through the pain of fundraising, working on sales, marketing plans. So there's a lot of recency of experience that when you share that, it becomes value add to your, and you can apply that. It's a learning opportunity. So when lemons are thrown at you, you learn from it, right? You learn you figure it out. It's a creative process. And then it's a way to give back. So when we're sharing stories, it's a give back to, maybe you want to share a story about how you've been given lemons and have you made lemonade. So it sparks a conversation. So with that, I want to introduce you to my lovely panelists. So first is John David, because he's closest to me. And John David will go through introductions in a little while. Gina Carr and Karen Cottrell. So with that, John David, do you want to do like a 30 seconds to 60 seconds intro?
Should I stand up or tall?
No, I'm going to sit down.
Okay, all right. I feel weird not having a table like right here, very down. But so I'm an analytics expert and an analytics educator. I'm the co-founder and director of analytics at Silvertone Analytics. We focus specifically on marketing analytics, sales analytics, and nonprofit impact analysis. And outside of that, I consult independently in teaching analytics.
Hi everyone, my name is Gina. Call me Jay for short if you'd like to, or hey you. I come from a background of hospitality, so for 2 decades I was in the corporate world. So to throw that back, it's not necessarily that we don't have experience, because I have a plethora of it, but you kind of get in the grind. You don't have as many lemons being thrown at you, right? I think that's what Bobby's getting at. I think in the entrepreneur world, you're really digging in and you're kind of catching everything. There's problems here, there's challenges, there's hurdles. So I left that world and decided, hey, I wanted to make life a little bit more challenging, right? Let's start Rent Assured. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rent Assured, an application that keeps landlords and tenants on the same page. And I have an amazing co-founder and CTO in Bobby Shabasta.
Hi, I'm Karen Keeler from the Feeling Friends, and we create educational products that focus on social and emotional learning for children. We grow children emotionally stronger. And that's been something that we haven't done. Most of us sitting in this room probably, I'll ask the question, how many of you are comfortable talking about your feelings? Well, you work with me. You know me, put your hand down, okay? There's about one person who doesn't know me. So we just aren't. And so what they found is that emotional intelligence is just as important as IQ. Because if you don't have those skills to be emotionally intelligent, that's not in this world today. You're just not going to make it in the business world. I actually was looking at a job description for a plush toy designer. I was looking for a plush toy designer. And on there, the bottom of it was social emotional. You must possess these skills. So employers are saying that that's the workforce that we want to hire. So we do it at the preschool level. We start you young so that you thrive in your adult years.
So my first question, and I'll start with Karen
Okay.
first, is tell us about a time when you've been thrown lemons, and how have you turned that around and made lemonade?
My lemon's name was Gann Memorial. I'm gonna continue to build this up because, and people don't want you to talk about it because it said it's such a negative thing, but I hired a manufacturer to build my plush toys, to create my plush toys. I vetted them, I even gave them one thing in advance. Karen remembers the little lot of love. They delivered with perfection. I said, this is the team for me. When I gave them my big order, they used my money for another project, put my project on the back burner. It has taken me from May until now, and I still don't have all my product yet. That was my lemon. That is the biggest lemon that I've ever experienced. But what I learned from that lemon was from CEO of the Feeling Friends, you always have two vendors. Always. It's the only way it can be done now. I have to have two plush toy vendors that are equal in quality. And I have to run orders at the same time because you never know, and my vendors in China, you never know if one vendor's not gonna do what they're supposed to do. So that's the biggest lesson that I've learned for me is always have to have two manufacturers. So just in case one, I almost lost my Atlanta Head Start contract over this because the vendor wasn't there. And so it's hard for you to understand, but if all of your life savings, everything you have in your investing dollars are tied up in one place, I also learned, do not put all your dollars in one place. They were gonna do my entire kit, spread it out. Spread it out. Spread your book somewhere, your plush toy somewhere, your plushes, your poster somewhere, your teacher's guide somewhere. Spread your orders out because you cannot ever tie all of your product up in one place.
Great, that's an awesome lesson. I'll ask the same question to you, Gina.
All right, so I'm gonna get really cheesy up in here. So those of you who know me are not surprised.
Nope.
So when Bobby said, "Hey, do you want to be on a panel turning lemons into lemonade?" Of course, I thought, well, how do I do that? Do I do that? And she brought up several examples. I guess I do. So the analogy to me is, what is a lemon? So it's either a challenge or a hurdle or a bad situation, something that frustrates you, right? And to make lemonade is kind of getting past that hurdle or having a positive attitude about that hurdle. So a learning lesson or something. And I really think it comes down to your attitude about it. Now I'm guilty. If I've had lemonades tossed at me or thrown really hard at me, what I do is to make lemonade, the sugar, right? All my supportive network. I reach out to them, I may vent for a few minutes, and then how can we get through this, right? The tool, that knife cutting the lemon, what tools do I have at my disposal to go out there, or what tools do you use to get through it? For me, it's writing a list down, or reaching out to other resources to get to that goal still. And then the water, right? The tear, no, not the tears. It's
Your tears, Gina.
it's the fluidity that you have. So that's how I like to cope. Now I am not always this chipper, positive person like anybody. So I don't think what this is about. It's that we're unique in the situation as entrepreneurs to have so many news or highs or tests or what is this or challenges, and you learn from it. And you try to stay positive. I can't tell you how many times I've called, or my desk mate is starting to play Mary Poppins in the background because she heard something about a manufacturer. So instead of venting about it, she turns up Mary Poppins and makes
There's
me
nowhere to
dance.
go but up.
So that, perfect example of it. So I really think it comes down to your attitude towards it. So whatever you need to get to that and still execute and get to your goal, that's what I do. Now a situation I'm gonna touch on for just a second is recently our company's pretty new, about 6 months, maybe less. We got accepted and were promised some funding, and there was a capital shortfall. So we learned not to count on money, but it created some big issues in the growth of our company. So what we did is we reached out to other resources. Karen helped provide us future customers. We're at Winston Starks, they helped provide resources. And then out in Greensboro, Luann Sanders, Stex Growth Lab series. We went there. So we reached out and got other resources that would help us get through and help us move along even in spite of a capital shortfall. So, who liked my cheesy analogy?
I did.
Okay,
Thank you.
John David.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk about the first lemon that was really hurled at me. We gotta go back a year and a half. So this was about the time I was finishing up my MBA, where I concentrated in analytics. So I was about 2 years into learning kind of my trade or my skill set. And I reached out to, this was actually the first time I reached out to someone in the community and sat down with them at their, what would you call it, business accelerator support system. And I sat down with this guy and he talked about all the things you need to have a successful business, and then asked me kind of some prying questions. And within, I think, 45 minutes to an hour, he just told me, you need to not start a business, you need to go work in industry for 5 years, and just dashed all of the kind of like momentum I felt like I had built up. And then, so that's kind of like the punch number one. And then punch number two, that kind of knocked me out for, I'd say, a good 2 weeks, that meeting was at 9 a.m. At 11 a.m., I had to go and present my thesis as a practice run to my cohort. And unfortunately, they were writing feedback. And I was just down in the dumps. And I kept like rotating back and forth and stuttered through my words. So not only did I get rejected at 9 a.m., I got rejected 30 more times back to back about how bad of a presenter I was. And yeah, that was right about the time I got my first consulting client. And yeah, for about 2 weeks, I was just like, I need to go grow up and get a big boy job and work at one of these big corporations. And it took me probably, I'd say, a good 2 months of consulting to realize, number one, this guy didn't have all the facts. He was in a position of power to me, but that doesn't mean that he understands analytics. He doesn't understand the current marketplace. And I can say, looking back a year and a half ago, I'm absolutely glad that I continue to push forward, because I mean, we're making some pretty good traction in the manufacturing space and the sales analytics space that I don't see very many other people doing.
Do you have a comment?
It's one more thing. When you get the lemons, you push through it. I was told in 2017, November 2017, I would never get funding. Somebody in the ecosystem told me I would never get funding. In May 2018, I got funding. It just made me work harder to say that this is not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I think
So-
what's interesting too is that the people who are telling you that are trying to do you a favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tell me, yeah, that was a favor. I'm like,
Yeah, they're like, they care about you as a person. They don't want to see you fail, so
Yeah.
they like
I
try to cut you out early on.
Yeah, in our situation, they did because they own less of our company. And we're going to show them and make them wish they had more of it.
So I think a couple of lessons that I'm drawing from this conversation. First is having multiple options, right? So when you're, as an entrepreneur, don't put your, what is the saying? Put all your eggs in one basket. You've got to spread that out. The second lesson is when you've been told that you may get funding, and this is very tough for entrepreneurs who are trying to raise money. Be creative and don't count on it. So figure out your runway and figure out how you could be very creative with the support system you have. So Gina is part of Winston Start's Launch Lab. She's got a great support system at Venture Cafe, but it's because she's reached out and asked for that help. So sometimes it may be thrown like, oh, my company's gonna die, but it may not, because you may have an alternative way to pay for these resources. And then finally, this is one that I face a lot. I was told earlier last year, or mid last year, that I didn't have a problem that I was solving in the insurance space. And then I went through the pitch, and they were grilling me towards the early part of the pitch to say, I don't see a problem. And I'm like, you don't see 68% of life insurance policies go unclaimed as a problem? But I had to go through the pitch, and then at the end, I was told I just passed the test. And sometimes that's what some of the mentors feel like they're giving you tough love. But if you just gave up, if I had given up at the earlier part of the pitch, I wouldn't have known that, okay, it was just a test and, you know, I got confirmation from them. But on your side, sometimes the experts and mentors that we do have in our ecosystem, they come from good intentions, but they may not have the industry background or the experience to coach you. So they're coming from a generalist perspective. So keep that lens open when you're talking to mentors, because they come from a place of goodwill. But if they don't have the experience, or if they're not in the analytics field, you may just want to listen to that, but don't take that too much to heart to say, okay, I'm just going to quit and go work for corporate America. So I think these stories, like what you're saying, you kind of said, no, let me try this, and built some confidence and got through that. So with that, I want to ask Karen, and I'll ask Gina the same questions, because you guys talked a little bit about funding. So talk about a couple of lemons that have been thrown from the funding perspective, because as we know, when you're a woman co-founder or a women-founded company, it's very difficult to get funding. I think we get 2%, or the stats are...
That's the last stat that I've read. It might be updated, so don't quote us on this, but it's about 2% of all women who get actual venture capital funding.
And it's 0.2% and 1% for African American women.
So do you want to share some examples if you feel comfortable sharing?
You've received funding.
I received funding. I received funding. Karen Barnes introduced to my investors. I met them here at Venture Cafe. They quite didn't know what I was doing, because when you talk emotional intelligence, people, most of the times, it goes over people's head. You just don't know. And when I say feelings, people go like this, because no one wants to talk about it. So I have 2 strikes against me and all. They listened because of the children. They had an interest in children, and they had children of their own. 2 of them had children of their own, and they knew the problems that they were having with their own children. So you have to find investors or people to fund you that need your product. They needed my product, and they knew the need that they had, and they knew that need was multiplied in the world. And so that was my inroad. And then I had my favorite investor. He was at the table with his check while everybody else was going to get this. He was at the check. He just believes. He just believes in what I'm doing. He just believes. So you have to find somebody that thinks the way that you do, can see your vision, not try to change your vision, but can actually see your vision. And then my investors dive in deep with me. Before I got sick, we were meeting once a week, every week. People say, well, that's very imposing. No, I was reporting out, and I didn't mind reporting out because I had their money. You know, it was my obligation to report out. And then they would come and they would see how they could help me on the journey. So I just got blessed with wonderful investors. Lots of people don't. I know some people, their investors just give them money and then they go. But I needed the help. I needed their wisdom, because they have $1 million company, multi-million-dollar company. So I needed their business wisdom as also. The funding that people couldn't believe, the lemon people couldn't believe, that my investors meet with me every week. But it's lemonade for me. It's lemonade. They came yesterday, and with this first time, because I've been so busy, that we got together, and one of the people sitting outside the office said, you sure do have a lot of fun with your investors. I said, we sure do. We sure do. We have a good time.
I'm so jealous. So we come from a different environment. So I come from 2 decades in the hospitality industry, so very corporate. This is my first rodeo in the entrepreneur community with venture capital funding. So without looking a gift horse in the mouth, we went through an accelerator program. We were the only all-female team. Without making any assumptions, we were treated quite differently. We were the only team that came in with an actual idea and turned it into an MVP and utilized our funds strategically by the end, within 3 months. I have a really good CTO. So that happened. We met all our milestones, but believe it or not, we were the only team that did not receive, with the capital shortfall, we received the least amount of money. We went into this accelerator as number 1. We left time for number 1, audience favorite. I still can't figure it out. So without making assumptions or stating it's because we're the only female founded team, we were definitely treated different. As to why, I'll leave it up to them.
So how are you turning that around, lemonade?
Give me a second, it's a little sour. what we're doing is, again, reaching out to resources. We're not gonna let it get us down, you know? We're reaching out to more mentors and aligning with strategic partners who can help uplift us. We don't know it all. I'm always open to feedback, and we're loving it. So, we just signed our first customer yesterday.
I was there, yay!
So I guess it made us, like John David was saying, it made us push harder. So it's that feeling, it might cripple you, don't let it. Go get that lemon, go make that lemon.
And then John David, I've seen you for the past couple of years doing a lot of pivots. So talk about your pivoting strategy and how has that made you turn some of the lemons that have been thrown. How's that helped you with your pivoting of your messaging and services?
This is a question that you
I
threw
just
at me.
totally threw a lemon at you.
Gotta pivot.
So one of my co-founders is here, Ryan. He's great. I'm gonna talk about Gary, the other co-founder. So
He's better.
Gary has a specific ideology around this. He is just relentless about seeking out negative feedback. So we are pitching, but then if we get a no, it's what's wrong? So all those no's are not. It's not just a loss. It's actually a data point we're collecting to loop it back to analytics. So, like for instance, we just went through Launch Lab together. We productized a service offering that we thought we were going to push out into the manufacturing space. And what we realized is that, number one, the price point was too low. We didn't have a distribution model. But we pivoted that from going after manufacturers to targeting marketing agencies. So then all of a sudden, we have a distribution model. So we sell one marketing agency, we have 50 clients. So the lessons we learned from Growth Lab, we then distilled down, thought about it pretty deeply, and then realized if we make this little change, all of a sudden it blows up.
So it's when something comes to you as a no, a negative, like here's a lemon, taking some of those data points and actually pivoting can actually get you. I mean, I have a saying that whenever I hear a no, yes is around the corner. And anytime somebody tells me no, I'm like, okay, yes is coming soon. So because I believe in that, but I also know how to pivot. So when I hear a no, why? It's getting that customer feedback.
Well, it's
so
hard
that
to
you
hear,
can-
but I think from a sales perspective, no is the second best thing you can hear. The thing you want to avoid is just this negative, this ambivalence maybe. So if you can get to a no, then you realize, okay, this is not.
That's not it. And then from you guys, it's about finding funding is very difficult, but it's not impossible. So it's trying to find the investors that believe in your product, because those are the investors that you want eventually, So
real quick, if you don't, so how did you find them?
Venture Cafe,
Right here.
Karen Barnes.
So just mix and mingle it?
Mix and mingle, and when I met with Karen, capital was always, raising capital was my hurdle that I had to jump. And when she met them, and she understood who they were, and understood that our backgrounds were very similar, she knew that they could probably, it was a match, possible match, and she introduced us right here at Venture Cafe.
Who's in the room looking for funding for their company? Anybody?
Okay, so with that, I know we've talked a lot about advice, but what is one advice you would give an entrepreneur? And then what we'll do is we'll get the folks to ask questions. So John David, do you want to start?
So I don't want you to get the wrong impression that I told a narrative about, I got told really bad, something really negative about myself. I don't think you should shut that out. I think you should consider the source. So if it were someone that was 15 years into managing an analytics consulting firm, giving me this advice, then yeah, I would say, okay, he might know a little something. But if it's just, like you were saying, this general entrepreneurship guy telling me, oh, this is not going to work and that's not going to work, he doesn't understand the technology, so it's kind of a moot point.
My advice, and it's a little bit of a piggyback, is if you're throwing a lemon and you're trying to make lemonade, it doesn't mean it doesn't sting for a minute. It doesn't mean you can't have a feeling about it, right? So, and it doesn't mean you can't learn from it and try to understand why this lemon just got thrown at my head at 90 miles an hour. So you can analyze it and then try to move through, try to make lemonade, you know? So it doesn't, our advice isn't necessarily, or at least mine is not to just always be positive and, you know, and pretend everything's happy, because that's just not reality. Stay in reality. But then see what you can do. Pivot. Do what you can to go get the lemonade that you intended to make, regardless of what everyone else is doing. Right?
And mine is, we get a lot of advice. Entrepreneurs get a lot of advice. I was in a accelerated creative startup, and during our deep dive week, there must have been 40, 50 people talking to us. And so all the information was coming like this. And I didn't know what to do, and I was a new entrepreneur, and well, what did I do? For me, I shut it down, and I prayed my way through it. And I took the advice that God told me to take, and I came in second place. But there was so much advice, and the advice that was the worst that I got, and I look back on it, were from people who had never been entrepreneurs. They were academics. Theory doesn't work when you're out here grinding and hustling, because you've never done it. So it's difficult for me to take advice from people who've never walked in the shoes that I'm trying to walk in. And that's a lot of the advice that I didn't take, because it was theory. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm really glad I didn't, because if you've never worked 24-hour days, 19-hour days, you've never done without a paycheck, you don't understand me. You really don't understand it. If you've never given up most of your life to make a dream come true, you don't understand it. It's all theory to you. So once people have done it, and they've been successful at it, or they're on the road that I am, that's the advice that I take. So for me, I just pray my way through it and just listen. Listen for not the entrepreneur's voice, but for another voice to talk to me.
Okay, with that, what questions? We've got 20 minutes. What questions do you have for the panelists? Okay, yeah, Ryan
Good.
first.
Oh, me first? Okay. How did you get your first customer? That's for everybody.
We utilized our network. So actually, technically, Karen Barnes met another gentleman here who was a property manager and said, hey, you two need to meet.
So Karen is the answer to all of that. I just need to hang out with Karen
Get
more.
to know Karen.
Come to Venture
And come to
Cafe.
Venture
Yeah.
Cafe, for sure. And then also just ask him. Don't be afraid to ask. Hey, who do you know?
Who do you know?
And I run in and they talk. You see me do it all day long. And by the way, are you a property manager, landlord? Do you know any? You know? So ask for the customer. And actually, my friend, this is not to take us down a rabbit hole. My friend opened a Filipino restaurant here in Winston-Salem, Asian Barbecue and Grill, 3230 Ronaldo Road. And I got roped into cashiering because he got so busy. And again, hospitality. So Saturday and Sunday I was doing that. One of his friends came in, just happens to have 30 properties.
Wow.
So we're signing them up too. So you never know. Cashiering,
Awesome.
going old school. I was selling furniture.
I got my first customer networking, Facebook. One of my friends from college, everything happens with you. One of my friends from college said, did you know that Keith is CFO for Head Start in Atlanta? I said, no, I did not. And I wrote to Keith, and Keith said, meet me in, did some conversation, he said, meet me in Anaheim. I was speaking in Anaheim. We met in Anaheim, Nicole was there. We met his team, and we did our presentation, we met his team afterwards. And so we had to fly across country to meet somebody in Atlanta. But you do what you have to do to meet, and then they invited us to Atlanta, and that's when we signed the deal. But you do what you have to do to get your first company. And it was networking. Who do you know? Who do you know?
So there's a short answer and a long answer. The long answer is that, you know, we've been unofficially operating under this Silvertone moniker and landing small deals through Ryan's Fungi Marketing and Gary's Performance CXO. But that's a long answer. The short answer is we met our first large nonprofit right here. I met Robert Eggleston.
Everybody
just,
has their answer, but keep coming back.
That's funny.
So yeah, he had a booth up here about leadership within Salem, and I just went up and talked to him about just, hey, I do analytics, and he said, we just heard back from one of our largest funders that they want us to quantify our impact before they want to increase funding for next year. So that was just, I mean, that felt like a glove.
And for us, from a Benekiva perspective, when we came into the marketplace, we had an MVP, but we didn't. We wanted somebody to beta. So from our company perspective, our clients are large carriers. So the sales cycle is tremendously long. So what we did was we leveraged our network and got the introduction to the CEO of our first client. So
Was it Karen? Did Karen connect you with
this is a non-Karen, unfortunately. I do want Karen to connect me to a large carrier one day. That would be so cool. But most of my clients are in Midwest, so I would love a North Carolina client. So we got this introduction, but we knew that we had an opportunity to how can we offer them value, right? We are a startup. These are large organizations with large security policies, all of these things that large companies have to do to get through, get a company to actually do an MVP. And we're actually doing claims. So that's, for a life insurance company, that's the most important thing that they do, is pay claims. So we came in very prepared with our pitch. And our pitch was showing them what the future could look like with their, the look and feel of the future. And I think that's how we got that MVP sign up, because we were able to take what they needed and actually show them a visual and a vision of what their future process could look like. So that's how we landed our first client. Our second client, and this is very important as we're going through this journey, is how do you become a thought leader of your industry, right? So right now, I breathe and sleep insurance. I write digital transformation articles. I'm an expert in that field. I study it, I comment, I'm in social media land, but that's my target audience. And my co-founder, Brent, is in the same boat. So he was actually presenting at a conference about how can carriers work with startups. And that's how we got introduced to our second client. So becoming thought leaders and actually doing presentations at conferences has been a very good lead gen for us from a client perspective.
I just add a comment. Your pitch has got to be spot on, and you have multiple pitches, a cocktail pitch and then your formal pitch. And you need to practice like it's no tomorrow and film it and ask people for feedback and ask them to be brutal. Because if your pitch doesn't resonate with a funder, they're going to write you off. And it's got to be compelling, and you have to be compelling as a pitch person.
And I would add to that passion. Like, as founders, you have to bring that passion, because I think even if you've got this, I've worked with so many startups that they have that pitch very mechanical down. I see no passion. I'm like, who are you? You're like, this 20-year-old, you want to save the world. Where's the passion? So I think injecting passion into practice can really lead you to success.
I have a question.
So Janae had a question, and then you can.
Well, I was kind of trying to get started, but I was going to ask, because I know Karen's story, which is phenomenal. Have you all in your businesses pretty much injected your story into like the background of your business in order to like to get the funding or to get clients? Like, is that a part of your business strategy? I know definitely.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's what everyone wants to know, the pain. And most of the time as an entrepreneur, that's why you started it, because you experienced it. and to lend to Bobby's conversation, you are an expert in some way or another. So become the industry expert, but you're an expert in your pain point. So for me, for Rent Assured, and my co-founder also had a pain point, but my tenants left our house with $12,000 worth of damage and texted they were gonna sue us over one burn hole in the carpet, right? Unless we return all their deposit back. So I was like, and time, money, just the pain, and I'll show you my picture. I even say the word burglars sometimes, because that's what I was cleaning off the wall. The idea hit me. I never wanted to do that again. It was gross.
I use my pitch oftentimes when people ask me, so what made you start Ben and Kiva? So we have 4 founders in our company, and every founder has a different story. So I came in about 2-3 years ago, and and the reason I gravitated towards Ben and Kiva was I heard that stat: 68% of life insurance claims go unclaimed. And I had just bought life insurance policy because I had a 1-year-old at the time, and I'm like, are you telling me there's 2/3 percentage, like she won't get the money that I'm paying every year for this policy? And when I didn't believe it, right? So when I did the research, I was like, oh my gosh, I could help disrupt it. I could help make it better. And I think that's where the passion comes for me. And that's my story. Is it was my daughter, knowing that she may not get that life insurance benefit that I bought, made me. That's how I tell the story when people ask me. So I do inject a lot of personal, even in the life insurance platform, it's a lot of personal experience as to why we started the company.
And mine was started so long ago based on my daughter suffering from depression. But the new piece, you always interject something new. The new piece has not only helped her, it's helped me along the way. I've become a better person, and people are really interested in hearing that something that you started for someone else is really impacting you as well, and to make the world better. So that's the piece that I use. The story just continues to grow.
And it's an easier way to explain your product if they know where you're coming from, right? That's how we all get to know each other, even networking. Oh, what do you do? Where do you come from? You know? So it's that same, it's almost like an introduction and a pitch, right? So that's how I feel.
So what was the question again? I forgot.
Do you interject like your personal story into when you're looking for funding or clients?
So I don't inject my personal story, but well.
What is it, Bob? What was the name?
I'm blanking right now.
Just say Bob, I think it is. In his pitch, he
He
talks
was,
about somebody named, what is that?
So that's not my. I guess that is my story. I have consulting engagements that we've completed, and what I can do is anonymize the data and then put together a presentation and walk through the use case. So yeah, I guess that is. I didn't have like an aha of like, oh shit, I need data in my life like everybody else. But yeah, I do have these like specific use cases locked and loaded and ready to go for when I'm talking to a nonprofit or a marketing agency or any other type of organization.
To someone else's story, someone else's pain, right?
Mhm.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Todd?
Is it
Ah,
Todd?
yeah.
It was Todd. He
That's
recently
sad.
did
You
a
don't even
pitch
know
that I
your
saw,
character.
and it
So
was
to
like,
answer,
Todd.
to answer your question, I just lied to all of my clients. I just tell them these made up stories. But I mean, they're true stories, but it's
Don't
like,
be like Todd.
it's like those black and white reenactments from the Lifetime channel,
Okay, you had a question?
I was gonna say, so when I think about entrepreneurship, it reminds me of being a parent, because you are cultivating and nurturing something and it's your baby. And so a lot of times it's hard to delegate and to put that trust in other people's hands to help you start that business. And I just wanted you guys to share maybe a story to where you were building your team and there was some reluctancy in sharing those getting people to come on board. After a while, you knew you needed it, but it was like you didn't want to relinquish
I'll relinquish anything.
Good, and I know you
At
were
this
like
point,
that.
please.
But I have run across entrepreneurs that are like, I know I need the help, but I'm trying to do it all, and I'm not sure if I want someone to handle this part. Sort of.
I kind of think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not always, because I like help. I am one person, and running hotels, I'm like, yeah, I can't run this by myself. But feeling reluctant, almost letting someone in the door is, our free services for Member Tribe is amazing. And then they're like, okay, what's your username and login for your website, and what's this and what's that? And I felt myself reluctant to kind of hand over some extra keys.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But I did it, and I can't
Right.
wait to see what they're
Right.
doing. But yeah, I did feel a little bit reluctant to let more people in the door.
Exactly.
No?
I think the times where I have been reluctant, I've been overworked, so then it's like that lesson of experience. It's like, why did I not ask for help, or why did I not delegate this, to somebody else or an intern, or found creative ways to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So I think that hard lesson of, man, I could have just done this very effectively and
Right.
efficiently,
Yeah.
has made me become a better delegator,
Yeah.
which is very difficult, especially when it's your baby.
Exactly.
And I just hired my first employee, and and she's an implementation manager, so basically she's my right-hand person. But it's been awesome to just, and I was initially going to delegate slowly,
Yeah.
but I had an appointment and I couldn't, I was flying to Des Moines, and I was like, I can't attend this meeting, can you run this meeting? And I got messages back from the team. She was great, Bobby, I know you're wanting to delegate this to her, give it to her, she's got this. And that was like, okay, relinquish the power.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but I think it becomes easier the more you do it.
So delegation is an ingredient in the lemonade.
Yes.
I think delegation comes into play with my organization and sales outreach. So I can't control what Ryan or Gary says when they're going and talking to a new potential client. And there's been definitely situations where we're sitting with the CEO and I do not have this specific problem solved yet, and I feel like a total fraud and imposter. So I guess that's kind of a form of delegation, but I feel like I'm the baby in the situation.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing a quick time check. We've got 5 more minutes.
I've got a question. Who's seen the new Netflix documentary about the Fire Festival? Has anybody seen that?
I have.
Yeah, so we watched this documentary about the Fire Festival. The guy he would not listen, completely delusional, but then he was lying to his investors. So there was like this, about the negative feedback thing, you need to take it in and absorb it, and it'll humble you. This guy was just a completely...
That's crazy.
The Fire Festival?
Yeah, so it was a festival on an island that apparently never happened at all. It completely collapsed.
That's
Oh
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
I have a question. How many of you in the room are entrepreneurs? Loud and proud. So, how many of you are at an idea stage?
I'm phasing out the idea stages.
And moving in?
You.
How many of you are in a growth or a scale phase? How many of you know what growth and scale are? I just learned the difference last week. Alright, how many of you are still looking for additional resources out there in the community? Like, what can I do, or where to go and get it? If you're interested and want to talk afterwards, or I'll give you my card and shoot you an email, we have navigated very quickly what's great, what's helpful, and a lot of, going back to the capital shortfall, what's free.
That would also make a great blog.
For those of us who have time. Bobby, if you guys follow Bobby is amazing on LinkedIn, social media, and making sure that she blogs and posts articles, and now a new endeavor. And sidebar, someone couldn't be here and you did a video series, right? So this is actually morphing into a video series. So where can we follow you at?
It's right now it's my personal YouTube channel. I literally started it December 31st. I was like, you know what, I'll just, I mean, I do videos, but I don't ever publish them on YouTube, so I was like, I'll start doing that. So I did an interview with Liz from Misfit Boss. She's been featured on People magazine. She has an amazing story about how she went from 300 pounds to 150 pounds, and she's kept it off for 9 years.
And something happened in a car a long time ago. Watch her video to find out.
Yeah, so it's
I almost said it, that's why I did.
so it was we were talking about how does she make lemons out of lemonade. So it's a pretty interesting story. So like I said, I talk to a lot of people, and there's so many interesting stories. So this is just an outlet of giving back and saying, hey, let's just share this knowledge and stories with everyone. So that's the whole mission behind lemonade out of lemons concept.
I love it. And 2 weeks ago, we're here, you're hosting a panel, you've already done interviews and posted videos. So, hats off. Thank you for having us.
Okay guys, thank you so much.